And welcome, friends. My name is Therapist Light. In today's video, I want to talk about ayahuasca. What is ayahuasca? What makes ayahuasca so powerful? What leads to healing when using and working with ayahuasca? What do you need to know in order to succeed in working with the medicine and not have one of the horror experiences that you can read about online from people who have experienced this medicine usually in a very traditional setting, and by traditional I mean karmically loaded. So I want to keep this video as short as possible, which is why I'm going to very briefly and quickly talk about my experience with ayahuasca and define for you what ayahuasca is first. Actually, that makes more sense. And then what you need to know in order to have a truly powerful healing ceremony with ayahuasca and what ayahuasca can do for you. Also a little bit how it's different from other plant medicines, such as usually the most known ones are marijuana and psilocybin or magic mushrooms. So first of all, what is ayahuasca? Ayahuasca is a traditional, by traditional I simply mean indigenous to Latin America, especially the areas of the Amazon, Brazil, and Peru. It also exists in Ecuador, it also exists in Colombia, these days it also exists in Mexico. It consists of two ingredients. The first ingredient is a vining tree that literally looks like a vine, a spiral, and that of which the root bark is taken. That is the ayahuasca vine itself. That is the cleansing aspect. That in itself is not going to give you powerful visual stimulation or what some people call psychedelics or hallucinations, which I'm not a fan of using that word, but it is used a lot. Point is, ayahuasca is the cleansing component, which, by the way, I've cooked my own ayahuasca, I've brewed my own ayahuasca and worked with ayahuasca separately, these two components separately. So number one, the ayahuasca vine, the root bark, the cleansing aspect, the aspect that leads to the purging, la purga, which is probably the thing that people are most afraid of. And then the second component of the ayahuasca brew is the DMT, which is the, I guess, more famous aspect of ayahuasca, and certainly the more liked one, because it gives you this very powerful visual experience of what people describe as an open third eye, as a deeply psychoactive experience, a journey through your mind, a journey through the universe, to speak from an external perspective, from projecting your inner landscape into the outer world. People usually experience various degrees. It also, of course, depends a lot on how experienced they are, how much do they surrender to the medicine, and also how gifted they are with regards to their imagination, and how the quantity of how much they have had. So the DMT aspect usually comes from chacruna, which is a leaf that you also find more or less growing next to the ayahuasca tree, vine. And these two are cooked together and brewed into a black mass that looks like black molasses. And it honestly tastes a lot like black molasses. It is very fibrous. It tastes like soil, really, like eating earth, like eating dirt. It's certainly not the most delicious thing you've had, but it has a very distinct taste that you do not forget. So ayahuasca, the cleansing aspect, the very guttural organs, speaking of organs, organic aspect of ayahuasca, and then DMT happens more here. It's your visual landscape. It's like I always like to say, it's your Google Maps. It's your navigation. It's how you navigate the experience more consciously, not necessarily more consciously, actually, more visually dominant. And when you feel ayahuasca in your organs, in your stomach, it is very much an intuitive experience, a feeling experience. Ayahuasca is a very feminine medicine. The DMT is actually the more masculine aspect to the medicine, or it is the masculine aspect. The ayahuasca vine is the feminine aspect. The DMT is the masculine aspect. Because light, seeing, consciousness is the masculine aspect, while love, intuition, feeling is the feminine aspect. And so ayahuasca has a great many healing properties and can be an incredibly powerful medicine to work with. However, there are also a lot of people who had very, very dark experience. I can include myself in that. But once you know which is which, and once you know how to truly work with this medicine, you understand that it's called medicine for a reason. An organic medicine, which in this day and age can very, very easily get you to a 5-dimensional frequency, a 5-dimensional consciousness, which is the same as to say, get you into your heart, for you to open your heart and to experience your soul through your heart, in your heart. You will actually no longer be in your mind. Your mind will give way to the heart, or what I call the heart mind. And so many people have used it to overcome addictions, depression, anxiety, trauma, PTSD, and a whole lot more. It truly is a miracle medicine coming from a standpoint of what Big Pharma offers people, which in 99% of all cases is poison to various degrees. Pharmaceutical medicine is based on nature, and it is an artificially altered construct that is entirely intended these days to make money and to keep the same old machine going. And taking pills is going to do one thing and one thing alone. It's going to suppress your problems. It's not healing. It's not truly medicating. It's just, let's push this further away. As I always like to say with suppression, a depression is just the suppression of energy. You become depressed by suppressing. And what happens when you take, let's say, an inflated ball, volleyball or whatever, and you take it to a water body, take it to the lake, take it to the ocean, and you push it down. And let's say you're in a deeper part of the ocean, so you can actually dive down. You keep pushing that ball, and you keep pushing it further down. What is going to happen? Eventually, that thing is going to come up extremely fast and with a vengeance, basically. And that's the same thing that happens when you suppress your trauma, you suppress your negativity, you suppress what you feel, what you have to say. So the reason that people usually turn to ayahuasca is because they have come to a point in their lives where they realize, I can't continue like this. This addiction is destroying me. Be that cocaine. I've met a lot of people who were able to overcome their cocaine addiction, other drugs, other artificial substances that are burning your life force away, burning the candle on both ends, and eventually kill you. There's a reason people who abuse substances look the way they do, and I'm including alcohol here. Alcohol is just the socially accepted and societally accepted standard for suppressing your trauma. So nothing wrong with a glass of wine here and there, but that's not what most people do, and that's not how most people use it. People are chasing highs. And people are also chasing highs with natural medicine such as marijuana and ayahuasca and others. I've seen it many times. It never ends well. The difference is with natural medicine is that because it is nature, because it is deeply connected to earth. There's a spirit in that medicine. There's no spirit in artificial well, if anything, there's demonic energy in artificial substances. But natural medicine it's called spirit medicine for a reason. And it's spiritually activating for a reason. And so when you disrespect and dishonor the spirit of that medicine, it's going to teach you a harsh lesson. And so ayahuasca traditionally has only been used in, like I said, the Amazon basin, Peruvian tribes such as the Shipibo tribes. To this day, it is usually ascribed to them, and it is considered that these people are the biggest experts at it. I greatly disagree with that. I greatly disagree with that because I have met very few indigenous tribal people who have actually worked on their karma. And of course, this is something that can be extrapolated to all of humanity. But with specific regards to calling a certain subset, a group of people, the experts in something. What does that mean? Just because you do something for 1,000 or 2,000 years, as it's claimed that they have, doesn't mean that you really know what you're doing. If you do it wrong this whole time, then you do it wrong this whole time. And I don't intend to put indigenous people down in any way, but I have seen so many ceremonies gone wrong and going wrong, and shamans getting their huge ego kicks out of using that medicine because it gives them this idea of being God, or a guru, which is a more Vedic, Hindu, Indian idea. To be the shaman, you are the guy in charge, and you are also powerful, and so on. There's a whole lot of abuse that happens in that. And since 2000, and especially 2007, in this process of the planet, if you think about plants growing from the soil, from the earth, they are a direct reflection of Earth's consciousness. As the planet has gone up in consciousness, has increased its consciousness, the plant medicine has risen in frequency as well. Which means since 2007, and for humanity especially since 2012, this shift of Earth to Gaia, of Earth from a 3- and 4-dimensional entity to a 5-dimensional existence. That's why people feel so great in nature. That's why people love to be in nature. I have, from my experience and from what I've seen, there's so much fear instilled around ayahuasca. It can be a very, very demonic and a very dark shadow experience, a very traumatic experience. And when you do not feel safe, and when you do not feel that you are in a container that is held by someone who does it with good intentions, you will not truly be able to heal. You might have an amazing experience flying through the galaxy and all that stuff, and you might purge a lot, and you might run to the toilet, and so on and so forth. I define true healing as something that happens from the heart with good intentions. Most humans and shamans do not have the frequency to work with the medicine at that level. So what they would need to do is to actually get out of the way of the medicine, serve the medicine, facilitate a ceremony, make everyone feel as comfortable and safe as possible, play music or whatever, but get out of the way and let the medicine do its work. Shamans usually try to control the medicine or the energy. And from my own personal experience, my first ayahuasca experiences in 2018 on Mallorca in Spain, held by let's call him a traditional shaman, with completely unresolved shadows, has drunk ayahuasca 2,000 times, has done zero shadow work, and it was really a big fest of siphoning energy from everyone. And that is an experience that you don't need. also going to the Amazon for, let's say, 2 or 3 weeks and being on a dieta, meaning you eat plant-based food, you are, especially if you're from the West, you are in a jungle, which that's not your native natural ambience. You are around people whose language you probably don't understand. You definitely don't understand their culture, because even the standard Peruvian doesn't understand Shipibo culture. You do it at night. You do it with 50, 60, 80 people, at least 30 people in a big maloca in a tent. It lends itself to a very fear-activated experience. By fear-activated, I mean traumatizing. And for a lot of people in the past, this might have been a very good experience because they were facing their fear in some meaningful way, shape, or form. But I repeat myself, it is not true healing. It is not a 5-dimensional ceremony. And so since I've led many ceremonies myself, specifically in Mexico, running a retreat center or two, I have quickly understood and learned, this was in 2023 mostly, I've quickly understood and learned that the medicine is still upgrading its frequency. The medicine is still gaining power and gaining traction. And from what I understand, looking online, and I'm comparing this with a few years ago, ayahuasca is more popular than ever. There are more and more people in the so-called mainstream, be it Hollywood or otherwise, talking about it and talking about its benefits. However, I guess the main problem here is, and the question that then arises based on what I just said, is, so how do I do this, or where do I do it then? How do I trust the shaman? That is where we come to what the New Agers and the hippies called set and setting. When people, specifically US Americans, due to geographical proximity, traveled to Central and Latin America to experience ayahuasca and other medicine in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, they came up with this phrase basically on how to best prepare yourself for it, and it's called set and setting. By set, they mean the mindset, like how do you think about it, how do you go into it, and by setting, the ceremonial setting, who do you do it with, who do you sit with, are these experienced people. So that is a good approach to have. However, once again, I'll say to that, this is not about your mindset. And mindset in itself is a word that already gives us an indication as to why it might not be greatly helpful. Because if you have your mindset, you have your mind set, which means you are stuck in 4D, you're stuck in your mental energy, and true change, where we live in 2025 now, this is the time to open your heart and to let the mind and the egoic mind surrender to the heart. That's what this is about. And for you to have the right experience, you need to go into it consciously. Consciously means you have an idea of what you're signing yourself up for. Watching a video like this where you are being made aware of there are shadows there, there are unresolved problems there, and I need to protect myself from that. Everything is intention. When you ask for protection, protection will be rendered to you. And then you will get to experience, irrespective of what's going on around you, you will get to experience what you need to experience. And this is, again, all of this is completely based on experience. Back in 2018, when my idea of spirituality was very much, I was a spiritual virgin, and my idea of calling upon divine protection in the form of whatever, guardian angels or simply energy practice and so on and so forth, was very, very basic, to say the least. And it was at times a very dark experience, but at the same time, I met the soul of my father, who had died 4 years previously to that experience. And it actually was his birthday, it would have been his birthday at the time. And I had a heart-opening ceremony and an experience of spirituality that I never had before and that I didn't even think possible. And so even though the shaman was doing his very shadow-induced thing and leading this whole thing with a great amount of ego and not good intentions, speaking also, if you're a woman and you're going to a ceremony where most likely the shaman is going to be male, well, you better trust that guy to keep his energy to himself. Because, again, we're talking about shadows here. And abuse happens in many different ways. No one has to physically get close to you for your energy to be stolen. And that's the danger that you may open yourself up to, because the whole point, speaking of leaving the focus, no longer focusing on your physical body, but focusing on astral body, or perhaps even beyond that, your light body, 5-dimensional to 6-dimensional, those are experiences you may have. Especially when you drink more medicine, you surrender even more, then you need to feel that you are protected and that nothing can get to you. And ultimately, you really need to do your research. You really need to feel from your heart that this resonates with you. There's also, like it was in my case, a strong probability, not a strong probability, it depends, but there's a probability that, for example, in my case, I needed to witness all these shadows playing out because it was directly related to my life, to my past lives, to what I'm here to do. As I always say, you don't get to do light work without doing shadow work first. Or actually, shadow work is the light work. And there's no such thing as denying that, and there's no such thing as being dishonest about it, which unfortunately still happens way too much. And I've witnessed that everywhere in spiritual communities. There's more ego there than anywhere else, because if you give an unconscious human that's traumatized the idea that he or she is God or goddess, well, let's just say it's not pretty. And what you can do to have the right experience and to truly experience healing, to truly experience your heart opening, your soul, connecting with your soul, connecting with your higher self. Intention. Intention is the most important point. You need to have the right intentions. And that's something that you need to prepare beforehand. Why do I seek to attend this ceremony? What goes along with intentions is also what's actually point 2, but it's very much intertwined, is preparation. And if you are smoking a lot and drinking alcohol 24 hours before you have a ceremony, your focus is going to be very, very much on purging. It's not going to be much on a more conscious experience of actually surrendering to the medicine and going with it. Because you have, through your actions of not eating correctly, not drinking correctly, not hydrating, alcohol and frequency lowering substances, you are creating a block, and that block, like a river, the first block needs to be broken first before we go further down the river. If you see to it that this block doesn't exist, you are going to have a much better experience. And also, if you think economically, most ayahuasca experiences are far from cheap, and you might have to travel a far way. So you want to make sure that you come prepared and that you do your utmost, your absolute utmost, to honor yourself and honor the medicine. That's the same thing. You honor the medicine, you honor your soul, you honor yourself. And so this is not intended to be a preparation guide. That is going to be for another time. I also have an article specifically for ayahuasca on my website. I'm going to link that in the description. And there's, of course, going to be a lot more material for this. I'm also actually going to create a video course this summer on how to prepare working with ayahuasca specifically. But this really pertains to all of plant medicine. And so the right intentions, the right preparation, and then the final point, surrender. The surrender happens usually when you get really close to the experience. So let's say you board the flight to go wherever you need to go. And it becomes really real when you're sitting there in a circle or whichever setting you have. Maybe you have a one-on-one experience. Maybe you feel like drinking the medicine by yourself, which can definitely be done. And it can be a very wonderful experience, a very, very empowering experience, actually. Which would mean that you would have to procure the medicine somehow, which, if you go online and search for it, isn't too difficult. And ultimately, speaking of legality, you have to ask yourself this: are you willing to live a better life? Are you willing to heal? And speaking of divine protection, human laws that are based in fear and keeping you stuck in the matrix of poison, speaking of big pharma, is that something you're going to submit to? Or are you going to courageously make the choice to heal yourself, irrespective of the law? I very much invite you to do so. Only good will come from it. The fear of authority is the fear of not taking charge of your life. Giving someone else power is the most disempowering experience you can have. Well, unless that someone has good intentions and actually seeks to empower you. But that's not the government, and that's not the police, and that's none of these authorities and entities that currently exist on planet Earth. Because humanity at large still lives in fear. And so, there's always exceptions to the rule, obviously. But generally speaking, that is how it is. And you need to understand that. Now, the surrendering part, to finish that. When you sit there, wherever that is, in whatever setting that is, and you're about to drink the medicine, then it's getting really real, because you're about to have this physical experience of ingesting this medicine. And it's going to bring up a lot of fear. It's also probably going to be very exciting. Anxiety and feeling excited works oftentimes along the same pathways of the nervous system, which is why being excited and being anxious can easily go hand in hand with each other. I've experienced that many times. And it's this, you're afraid of something, but you're so excited to do it. It's just the positivity will overwhelm the negativity. And you're actually so grateful and so happy that you're facing your fears. Being a coward will never get you anywhere. Unfortunately, still a choice that way too many people make. But in order to surrender to the medicine, you simply need to put your ego aside. You need to put your expectations aside. You might have an idea of expectations of what you want to experience. It will not be like that. It might be a version of that, but once you are getting out of your body and out of your egoic mind, you will realize how almost all questions that you asked were actually irrelevant. And let me show you, speaking from the medicine's perspective and from a spiritual perspective, let me show you what truly matters. After my first ceremony, I'll never forget, just having talked to my dead father, to the soul of my father, I was speechless. And it took a lot. It still takes a lot for me to be speechless, but that was one of the moments that I was completely speechless. I didn't know what to say, and sharing that experience was very, very hard to find words for. And so what I want you to do, and my intention with this video, is for you to have an empowering, a safe, an empowering, a beautiful, a spiritual, a healing, a loving, and enlightening ceremony and experience. And Also, at this point, I want to mention, if you have taken ayahuasca dozens of times already, that doesn't mean that you have exhausted the medicine's abilities and capabilities. Which brings us to point number 4, intention, preparation, surrender. And number 4 is integration. And integration is as far as truly living and embodying the experience and the learnings that you have received, because plant medicine, also called master teachers, plant master teachers by many. And for you to really extract the lessons from that, you need to integrate it. Integration means that the lessons that you've received, after the day after you had your ceremony, write it down. Make sure to record it. Give yourself as much opportunity to revisit what you just experienced. Because if you experience a 5-dimensional frequency, or even higher than that, while you are still very much stuck in a lower 4D frequency, maybe even in a higher 3D frequency, you're still very physically dense, this here will make no sense to this being here of you. Speaking of the multidimensional nature of you. This here will make no sense to this here. Your higher self talk to your current self. And in order for your current self to understand this here, you need to make choices that bring you up, ascension, to increase your consciousness. You need to make choices that raise your frequency to a level where you more and more understand what happened here. That is your job. And if you don't do that and you take the medicine again, the medicine will show you the same stuff again, or it might actually show you nothing in a way of punishing you because you're not honoring the lessons from before. I witnessed that many times with people too. Going around in circles, always the same thing. 10 times, 50 times, 100 times. They got nothing out of it because they never did anything with it. They were just chasing highs. And that is something that can most obviously be perceived these days with marijuana. A lot of people just chase a high and then come back. Chase a high and then come back. And they, of course, get addicted because they want to feel like this, but they're not willing to do the work that's required to get here. Be that detoxification, fasting, changing your environment, losing friends, changing your job, starting a business, changing a country, whatever it is that your soul needs you to do for your frequency to rise. And everything that's worth anything in life takes courage. Courage is the bridge that gets you across the cliff. The gap that you feel from the life you have now and the life you want, there's a bridge there, and that bridge is called trust. It's called surrender. It's called courage. Without that, you will never get anywhere. And so, my suggestion, to wrap it all up and to conclude it, as far as working with ayahuasca goes, is this. Be clear as to why you're interested in it. What is it that you want to heal? There's not a single soul, not a single person on the planet who doesn't feel the call of ayahuasca, as they always call it. And this is how I felt. In 2015, December, I just moved to Thailand to start my first business. Someone at a co-working space, a friend back then, told me about ayahuasca. It's the first time I ever heard of it. And immediately, my body was vibrating, or what they call soul shivers. I was like, for some reason, this really speaks to me and it resonates deeply, but I'm also, as he told me about, you have to face your fears. Of course, I was like, okay, well, when the time comes, I will. It took longer than I thought, to be honest. But when it was finally time, almost 3 years later, I was so ready that my ascension just happened in a few months, going from 40 to 50 to 60 and even beyond. And then going back to reintegrate it all. So you have your own unique path. You have your own unique path that you need to walk. If you feel the call of ayahuasca, heed that call. See to it that you attend a ceremony, create your own ceremony, whatever. This is also something I'm going to teach people through said video course that I'm going to publish and release this summer. I'm not quite sure yet when that will be, but it will definitely be this summer. So honor the call that you feel from the medicine, honor the spirit of the medicine, surrender to it, prepare yourself, have the right intentions. Because my time is worth a lot and my expertise is very unique, I charge people a lot of money for one-on-one ceremonies because it's an entire day for me. And it's actually even more because it takes preparation for me. I need to use all that lower frequency and bring it into light. That's my job. I never called myself a shaman, call myself a light shaman. I considered myself a guide, and I still do. It's a very exhausting experience. So when I charge people $1,000 for a day's worth of ceremony, for a one-on-one ceremony, and I saw that they didn't do what I asked them to do, that they didn't come prepared, that they didn't implement what was given to them, it's not very gratifying. You know, and I don't care about the money either, because the energy in that money is then also not aligned and correct. So do yourself a favor or many favors and follow the steps I've laid out here. Intention, preparation, surrender, integration. And if you do that, then write it down, be clear about it, do your research, choose the right ceremonial experience, and I promise you, you will have an amazing, amazing experience that will be magical, that will be mystical, that will be, how do they call it, mind-blowing, quite literally. It will blow your mind, it will open your heart, and you will experience yourself as a spiritual being that is more powerful than anything you've ever dreamt of. Powerful in the right way, I should add here. Powerful with an open heart and with a true soul activation. That is what you want, that is what you're looking for. And even if the shaman is not in a position to give you that because they are not soul activated, doesn't mean that you can't receive it. Because your ascension, you opening and finding your heart is not dependent on anyone else. Others might very much try to hold you back from it, but that is why you need to find the right setting so that you can minimize that risk and you can maximize the support.